The storm rolled in long before the first drop of rain touched the broken asphalt of Maple Lane, but for Daniel Hayes, the real storm had started years earlier, the day he became a single father. That night, however, something else was waiting for him, something that would turn his quiet, tired world upside down. It began with the cry of a child echoing across the empty street, a sound too fragile, too scared, too out of place in the cold November wind. Daniel froze, his heart thudding in the hollow pit of worry that lived permanently in his chest. He had no idea that the next few hours would test everything he believed about kindness, fate, and the invisible threads that tie strangers together. Backhand index pointing right if you believe in the ripple of love, the idea that one small act of kindness can transform lives. Please like, comment, share and subscribe to the channel to support more emotional stories. Daniel stepped out from the dim porch light of his small rented duplex, the only home he could afford while raising his 6-year-old son Jacob. He stood still for a moment, listening. There it was again, a soft sob, shaky and frightened. He followed it, moving past the junk-filled yard next door and the leaning mailbox someone had never fixed. At the corner of his driveway, under the yellow glow of a flickering streetlight, sat a little girl no older than 5. Her tiny blue dress was soaked, her shoes were missing, and her tangled hair clung to her face. She hugged her knees tightly, shaking. In that instant, Daniel's heart cracked open. He knew that look, the lost, empty confusion of a child who had been failed by the adults who were supposed to protect her. He had seen it in the mirror of his past and in Jacob's eyes on the nights his mother didn't come home. He approached slowly, speaking softly, trying not to scare her. She lifted her head, revealing wide hazel eyes shimmering with tears. She whispered one word, small and trembling, "Mama." Daniel felt a shiver run through him. She wasn't from the neighborhood. He knew every child within a mile radius because he had walked those streets endlessly with Jacob, teaching him bike rides and searching for hope in simple moments. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. He wrapped his jacket around her small shoulders and carried her inside. Jacob peeked from behind the hallway door, curiosity battling concern, but Daniel offered a reassuring nod before settling the girl on the couch. She didn't speak much. She just held his hand, gripping it like a lifeline. When he asked for her name, her lips quivered, and she whispered, "Leah." He tried asking more questions, but she only repeated fragments, "Mama, gone, dark car, loud." Her fear spilled into the room like cold air, touching everything. Daniel made her warm soup, turned up the heater, and gave her one of Jacob's old blankets, the fluffy yellow one with the faded cartoon bears. Leah clutched it instantly, her shaking slowly easing. He called the police, expecting them to react urgently to a lost child wandering alone at night. But the operator told him a storm had caused multiple accidents and delayed response times. They would send someone as soon as possible. Daniel knew what that meant, hours, maybe more. And so, he stayed with her. In that time, he learned that Leah trusted him in a way only children could, unconditionally, quietly, instinctively. As the rain lashed against the windows, Daniel watched her fall asleep on the couch, curled like a wounded bird. Something inside him, something fierce and protective, awakened. He had been a single father for years, scraping by with 2 part-time jobs, selling old tools to pay for Jacob's asthma medication, and still trying to teach him that the world could be good, even when it wasn't kind. Yet at that moment, he knew without hesitation that he would do anything for this lost child, even though she wasn't his. The storm outside grew louder, but inside, Daniel felt a strange calm, as if fate had paused the world so his heart could make room for someone new. Hours later, just after midnight, a pounding knock erupted at his door. It startled him so violently he nearly dropped the mug he was holding. Jacob rushed out of his room, half asleep and scared. Daniel motioned for him to stay back and approached the door slowly, feeling a chill run down his spine. When he opened it, he was met with a sight so striking he forgot to breathe. On his doorstep stood a woman drenched from the storm, her breath coming fast and uneven, her cheeks streaked with tears that rain couldn't wash away. Her tailored coat clung to her like a second skin, her diamond earrings flashed under the porch light, and her presence radiated power and desperation all at once. She looked like someone who belonged in a mansion, surrounded by guards, not in front of a broken duplex on Maple Lane. But it wasn't her wealth that stunned him. It was her eyes. They were the same hazel brown as the little girl sleeping on his couch. I think you have my daughter," she choked out, her voice breaking on the last word. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Daniel stepped aside, letting her in, watching as her gaze locked onto the small form curled beneath the blanket. The sound she made was raw and achingly human, a mix of relief, anguish, and overwhelming love. She fell to her knees beside Leah, gently covering her face with trembling hands. Daniel stood silently, watching a mother's heart in pieces and whole at the same time. The woman introduced herself later, once she could breathe again. Her name was Evelyn Ward, CEO of Ward Innovations, one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. Daniel had heard her name before, always in headlines about power, success, and wealth. Yet the woman in front of him looked nothing like those perfectly polished news photos. She looked like a mother who had lived through her worst nightmare. She explained that Leah had been taken during a security breach at a private event at their estate. A car had crashed through the south gate, causing chaos. In the panic, Leah disappeared. They feared someone had abducted her, but somehow, miraculously, she had gotten free and wandered off in the storm. Daniel listened quietly. Evelyn's hands shook as she spoke, her voice faltering each time she glanced at her sleeping daughter. She thanked him repeatedly, her gratitude spilling out in broken, emotional waves. But Daniel shrugged it off, embarrassed and uneasy. He wasn't used to praise, and he definitely wasn't used to billionaire mothers in his living room. Evelyn insisted on giving him something, money, a reward, anything. But Daniel refused. Not because he didn't need it, because he did, desperately, but because it felt wrong. He didn't help Leah for recognition. He helped her because she needed someone, and he couldn't imagine doing otherwise. This confused Evelyn. People didn't refuse her. They didn't turn down wealth, opportunity, or favor. She looked at him with a strange mix of respect and disbelief. Before she left, carrying Leah protectively in her arms, she asked for one thing, his address. I need to thank you properly," she said, her voice soft, her eyes lingering on Daniel longer than expected. He nodded awkwardly, unsure what properly meant to a billionaire. When the door closed behind them, Daniel had no idea that this was only the beginning, that the ripple of love he started would return to him in a way he never imagined. The next morning, he woke early for work, rubbing sleep from his eyes and checking on Jacob, who was still curled up peacefully. He prepared cereal, packed lunches, and hurried through the routine of another exhausting day. But beneath the fatigue, something warm lingered, Leah's small hand gripping his, Evelyn's tearful gratitude, and the unexplainable feeling that something had shifted. He brushed it off as imagination. Until the same black car that had taken Evelyn and Leah away pulled up to his house again at noon. When the door opened, Evelyn stepped out, not frantic this time, but composed, radiant, and carrying a simple folder in one hand. Daniel stepped outside, confused. She greeted him with a warm smile that didn't quite hide her exhaustion. She explained that she hadn't slept, spending the night holding her daughter close. And all she could think about was him, the stranger who protected Leah, who stayed with her, who refused money. She told him he had reminded her of something she hadn't seen in years, purity of intention, goodness for its own sake, the kind of heart wealth money could never buy. Daniel didn't know how to respond. He shuffled his feet and looked away, embarrassed, but Evelyn took a breath and said something that stunned him. "I want to help you. Not as repayment. But because kindness like yours deserves to be protected." She handed him the folder. Inside was an offer, something no one had ever given him before. A full-time job with benefits, flexibility,